Hello and welcome to the PMP Exam Information Session. We're here to talk about updates to the PMP exam that will take effect in January of 2021. It's great to have everybody with us today. Thank you so much for joining. My name is Barb Waters and I'll be facilitating this session. And I'm joined behind the scenes by Carl Mullen, who is one of our PMP mentors. Hi, Carl. And you can see Carl there in the chat. He is here to help with any questions you might have and to help facilitate this session as well. So it's great to have you with us. And I did see a hello from Rome. Hello. And please let us know where you're joining from. If you can chat in, we'll warm up that chat, find out where everybody is joining from. I happen to live in Colorado in the US. Carl is in Fredericton, which is up just in Canada, northeast of Maine on Atlantic time. It's 9 a.m. in the morning for me. For Carl, it's already noon. All right. Yeah. So oh wow, we've got folks joining from everywhere. This is very exciting. For those of you who are joining us in replay, I'll go ahead and read some of these chats out loud to you. You can get the chat transcript, but I'll try to make sure that I read along so that you know what we're discussing real time. So I'm just going to sample here. We've got Munich, Maryland, Argentina, Montreal, Hawaii, Seattle, Virginia, New York City. We've got Malaysia, Toronto, India. This is outstanding. It's just, I think we've got the Netherlands. Welcome, everyone. Milan. Oh, Colorado Springs. That's not too far from me. Brazil and Florida, Philippines. So I won't go on, but this is a very exciting group to have. As you know, the PMP is the #1 global non-technical certification. So the fact that we do have a global audience is very appropriate considering that these changes will impact all of us. So thank you again. If you're just joining us, we haven't started with the content yet. We're just getting to know one another and saying hello from around the world. So welcome to everyone. And it's great to have you with us. So if you're following along, you'll see that we've offered a link to access the documents. So on this first screen, we do have a link to those documents. If you have any difficulty with that link, sometimes we get blocked by firewalls and things like that. We do have a longer link that we can share with you, and I'll chat that in right now. It's just not as pretty. Yeah, thank you. Carl just chatted it in. And so you can see that is the link. And for those of you watching on replay, this tiny URL is going to be much better. If you have any difficulty at all watching in replay, you can also access Carl and the mentoring team right from within your learning platform. So if you have any trouble accessing documents, just let us know and we'll help you. So what's on deck for today? We're going to talk about the new PMP exam, what is changing, what you need to know. But first, I'd like to ask you to help us understand your goals for this boot camp so we can make sure we target our content appropriately, spend the right amount of time on each section. So I'm going to launch a poll right now to ask you, can you tell us your goals for this boot camp? And you can choose more than one. So I'm going to launch that right now. And the choices are, I would like to learn about the upcoming changes to the PMP exam. I'm seeking information about the PMP on behalf of my organization. I am a PMP candidate and I plan to take the new version of the exam. And also the fourth option is I already have my PMP and I'd like to learn about how the content is changing. And we do have other there as an option. So for those of you who other is the appropriate choice, please chat in for us. We don't really have a free form answer, but chat in, let us know what you're looking for from this boot camp so we can target the content to you as well. So if you did say other, and you can just chat in, give us an idea of what you're looking for. And as far as, so I'll keep an eye on that chat, and I'll let this poll run for just a few more moments, and then we'll end polling and share the results with everybody. So give that a little bit more time. All right, and 3, 2, 1. We'll end the polling and share the results. So 70% of you would like to learn more about the upcoming changes to the PMP exam. That's great. You're in the right place. 7% of you are here seeking this information on behalf of your organization. All right. I do see someone in the chat saying, I'm thinking taking it this year or next year. So I'll talk a little bit about these changes, and they're significant. And if you are interested in taking the current version of the exam, the one thing you'll need to know is your timeline is very defined. You have to do that before December 31st. And that would mean a pretty intense studying session, because we do estimate about 60 to 90 days to prepare and take the exam. If you are looking for information for the new exam, you can take a more relaxed pace, because you could start learning now. The exam will be available starting the 1st of January, and then you can take the new version. And so I'm kind of catching up with the chats here a little bit. And so, yeah, for those of you who are already certified, which is also an option here, 8% of you said you already have the PMP. You want to learn how the content is changing. And then 42% of you are PMP candidates. So for those of you who are candidates, just to let you know, we do have a current training that aligns to the current exam, and it is already available out in the learning platform. We don't have any live boot camps any longer for this exam that will be retired in December, but we do have that content available to you on demand, on replay. And so if you are looking to sit for the exam by the end of this year, that's the content you'll be looking for. If you're looking for information about the new exam that starts January 1st, then what I would recommend that you do is stick with us for this session, and we'll talk more about when our first boot camp will happen. Our full boot camp to prepare you for the exam will begin on October 5th, and it will run that week. So yeah. All right, so I'll stop sharing the results. Thank you to those of you who participated in the poll. For those of you watching on replay, unfortunately, the poll doesn't show up, and that's why I read the results out loud. Okay, so our agenda for today includes talking about the new PMP exam content. We're going to talk about the PMBOK 7th edition, which is due at the end of this year in the 4th quarter, and what will be happening with that new PMBOK 7th edition that you might need to know, if there's an impact on the exam or not. We'll talk about that. There are new question styles coming with the new PMP exam, something that is new and different that we've never seen in the past. And so we'll discuss that as well. And then your recertification process. So if you are already certified, what are the steps to stay certified? For those of you who have already passed your exam, we're probably all in agreement that that's not a test, an exam that we want to take again. And so staying certified and keeping that current is key, and we'll talk to you about how to do that. All right, the other thing we'll do today is visit the PMI website. So we'll jump over there and look at some things live that are on the site. So let's start with kind of why the exam is changing and what's evolving in our profession. So project management has always been around. It may not have been called project management. We might not have used the vocabulary that we've grown to know today, but there are some really interesting documents that have been found with projects that were basically before the history of project management, before it became an official job or role. And there are some really neat ones. One of them that I read goes all the way back to a project that was, I think it was sometime in 4 to 600 BC, and before Common Era, and it was talking about the number of oxen, and how many oxen were used to cart materials, how the workers were fed, and the materials and supplies that were used. It's really interesting. So that's prehistory. And then we get into the 19th century, and some things like the railroads, and still we weren't really coming together with best practices at that time. You'd have some individuals who were very knowledgeable, but it wasn't shared knowledge. So then we come to the mid-1950s, when project management actually became more of a discipline, and we had gurus who went over to Japan, where a lot of the quality parts of project management had their beginnings. And so we came up with some of the more modern approaches. And actually from the mid-50s, when you take our full class, you'll learn some of our techniques are still best practices that started back then. But then we came up to the early 2000s, when things were really rapidly changing. We now have the internet and technology and the speed of change. And so what we're seeing now is a shift to more of an agile approach to project management. It's a lot harder these days to make a plan and stick to the plan and expect that everything will stay the same. In fact, that's not the way it works. I'm sure we're all used to something a little bit more like this. We live in this environment of constant change and rapid change. This year in particular has presented challenges and changes to many of us that we didn't see coming. And we have to adapt. We have to do it quickly. Too much planning usually results in a lot of rework and frustration too. And so we have to look at our projects differently. We have to look at it through a different lens and what's important now. So PMI acknowledges this, and that, we used to have a very traditional approach. How many of you have that are certified took your exam with the waterfall? It has so many names. So it's called waterfall or plan driven. That's another way of saying it, plan driven project management. We also call it traditional project management. And that life cycle of planning all up front. It's very process based. And then you just execute your project exactly according to the plan. And change is more of an exception to the rule. Yeah, and so this is the way it's evolving. Now we can't stick to that plan. The evolution not only includes the way we approach the work, but the way we lead our teams. And so traditional project managers in the past have often been top down. And so you have this leader. They decide what the strategic goals will be. It's kind of at the enterprise level of the organization. And then everything is top down. So instructions are delivered through the hierarchy of the organization, and the employees who are on the front line take instruction from their leaders. It's, oh, good. Yeah, for those of you who are certified, please chat in and share that with us. I love to see this. So Mark says he took the exam in 1998 in the UK with the waterfall. I'm curious, Mark, was that still the paper version of the exam? Or had they brought it online by that time? Because I know, yeah, it was paper. Yeah, so the exam itself and the way it's delivered has come very far in just your wrists ached at the end of the exam. I can't even imagine. Yeah, paper, and not only that, did it take you about 6 weeks to get your results as opposed to today? So Gustavo, that PMBOK was the, yes, it took 6 weeks or so to get your results. That version of the PMBOK guide was the first version, but it wasn't called the PMBOK first edition because of course they didn't really, I guess, anticipate that we would be going on the 7th edition by now. But it was the PMBOK first edition at that time. So what's happened with the PMBOK is that it started small, then it got very large by the 6th edition, and now we're actually seeing that the PMBOK guide will be more streamlined again. So we'll be talking about that a little bit. As the project manager role has evolved, we've moved from that top-down directive approach into more of a servant leadership where it's the leaders who are kind of lifting the team. And in fact, sometimes you'll see these organizational charts, instead of being top down, they'll be horizontal, and the leaders and the teams will be more collaborative. And so the role has changed a lot. And we had the traditional project manager with the top down. Now we have the servant leadership supporting the team, being more of a people-focused leader rather than just task-focused. So that's changing. And another thing that we're going to see is the value delivery being a really important focus. So processes used to drive everything. For those of you who are somewhat familiar with the PMBOK Guide 6th edition, we have 49 processes that were very prescriptive. First you do this, and then when you're finished with that, the results of the work you just did, you'll now enter into this next task or set of tasks. Not anymore. What's happening now is that PMI is taking a step back and saying, we've asked all of the project managers in the field through what's called a role delineation survey. They do this about every 3 years or so. This role delineation survey asks project managers, how do you do your job? And project managers were saying, not in this process-driven way. We're focused on value first at the organization level, at the enterprise level. And from there, we look at what our business environment is, because of course, every project has to have context. What project, a project that would work here where I live in Colorado might not necessarily work the same way where Carl lives in New Brunswick in Canada. It might not work the same as for someone who is in Europe. And so we have to think about that. Business environment does impact the project very much. Then the people. So who's the team? What are the skill sets? And process is really last. So value will drive the process now, not the other way around. And so we've learned, just because you follow a set of processes that are prescribed doesn't mean that your project will be valuable or useful at the end. So value delivery is a key focus. For those of you who aren't certified yet, I'll show you the difference between this traditional approach to projects and what we're looking at today with Agile. So traditional project management is plan driven. We basically have a vision for what we're creating and we execute to that vision. So we spend a lot of time checking to make sure the project is viable at the beginning, organizing and preparing and planning. Finally, we execute according to that plan. We don't really like to go backward. That's more of an exception to the rule. We'll kind of validate, make sure that the plan matches what we're delivering, make some corrections if we see variance there, and then close out the project with one deliverable at the end. It's kind of like a ta-da moment at the end of a traditional project. And so, oh, yeah, okay. In the chat, some of you have more Agile experience, and so you've been looking into that. And we do have Agile specific certifications. One thing that I think you'll find interesting is that there is a particular Agile certification called the PMI ACP. That stands for PMI Project Management Institute. Agile Certified Practitioner. What's happening is that PMI noticed, like you said, Sarah Beth, a lot of us are performing some Agile work, and they're bringing that content in together side by side with the original PMP traditional plan-driven content. And this new exam is going to be about 50-50 between traditional and Agile, and even a hybrid between the two. So we'll talk about those a little bit. So the Agile project lifecycle is different. It has this whole plan, do, and then check, act. And plan, do, check, act is an iterative, meaning again and again. It's a cycle. And it comes from one of our quality gurus by the name of W. Edwards Deming. And Deming basically said, you know, maybe we should see how it's working out before we keep moving ahead. And every now and then on a cycle, on a cadence, we'll plan a little and do a little, but let's make sure we're on the right track, assess, and then we'll start again. And when we have this iterative approach, we can also kind of tweak or adjust our plan and our direction with every cycle. So it's pretty helpful. We can adapt. It's adaptive planning. And so this is more agile. And I see, Ignacio, you say that you do a combination. So you've got the hybrid. Yes, and so PMI is acknowledging this, that, yeah, we're probably not plan-driven so much anymore, or not exclusively plan-driven. So another side-by-side comparison of traditional versus agile. With traditional, we have that ta-da moment at the end. We deliver one time, and if we don't hit the target, it's considered a failure sometimes. Like, we didn't perform this project correctly. It's as if we were aiming at a target, but we only have one shot. We get one try. And so we're going to spend a lot of time in planning. We'll probably check the wind speed, double check and triple check with the customer to make sure we understand what their needs are. And we hope that our thought bubble matches their thought bubble of what they want out of the project. And if we aim for the target, again, if we miss, that's considered a failure. With Agile, it's much different. We don't limit the number of attempts that we have. In fact, the best thing we can do is just shoot the first arrow quickly, and maybe it lands over here. But that's okay, because now we get to assess. We get to talk with the customer and say, is that what you were thinking? Or, and with actual results, you can talk about it more easily than just thinking or thoughts. Now I have a demo of a product or a prototype that I can try out, give feedback to the project team. The project team then has less rework because we only did a little bit of work, and now we can move forward. So, and we can keep making course corrections as we go. So this is more of an agile approach, and we can adjust the plan as we go. All right, a little bit more about the side-by-side comparison of predictive and agile. So predictive, fully plan-driven. Notice that these arrows, they don't go backward. This is why we call it waterfall, by the way, because we kind of move from one phase to the next. In Agile, we are okay with a little bit of rework. It gets us closer to the goal. If we make a few attempts, we know more and more. We collect feedback and get information as we go. And oh, I'm sorry, is this control bar in your way? Is that what you're talking about? Can I move that and get it out of your way? Is that helpful? Oh, good. All right. That is supposed to be invisible. I bet that's a little bit of a Zoom glitch. Thank you so much for telling me. Yeah, that doesn't need to be there. I'll just, if you see me looking up, it's because I do have a second monitor over there. I'm still paying attention to us, but a little bit of our, oh yeah, thank you for telling me. Okay, so with predictive waterfall, we move forward, only forward unless we have a real need to change. So I have a question for you then, because a lot of times we talk about traditional versus agile, and we make agile sound like, oh, this is great. But sometimes, depending on the type of work you're doing, maybe agile isn't available or not the appropriate approach. Can you think of a time when it would be appropriate to move in a traditional way through a project and that maybe agile isn't the best? Can you think of examples of when it, okay, so Nancy says construction would, yes, in Melbourne, right. Construction lends itself better to this traditional approach to work because it's a lot harder to create the building and then say to the customer, can you come in here and tell me how you like this? What do you think about this? And then the customer says, you know, it's pretty good, but if you could just please switch the door to over here and the window to over there, I think I would like it better. If you have that conversation, of course, it gets really expensive because you're talking about physical labor, you're talking about the resources and the materials and supplies, much different than Agile, which tends to be good for knowledge-based projects where it could be lines of code or knowledge work as opposed to physical work that now has to be destroyed or rebuilt. Rework is expensive in traditional projects. Now, could we use a hybrid? Definitely. How many of you like to watch some of those home and garden shows like HGTV or DIY, do it yourself? And so, and I know we're a global audience, so you may have your own version of those shows that I'm referring to that are building and home improvement types of shows. Is anybody into those? I feel like we've got that on the TV all the time here at home, just always watching some kind of home improvement channel. So what I'm getting at with this is that with the home improvement shows, they, yeah, you do, you like those. I do too. And you can have a hybrid approach. So what could happen is they can model, use like a 3D computer modeling for the design piece. So maybe we're able to implement some kind of hybrid where the design could be agile, and I can give you 3 mock-ups of what the building could look like. You can give me feedback based on the mock-up, but then when we get into development or the actual building, we have to be traditional at that point in time. Yeah, so that's an example of how we might blend the two. So a little bit about these life cycles. So I've just shown you the difference between traditional and agile. Just those two things, but didn't really talk about the characteristics of agile. So with agile, we know that the scope can evolve, and it's okay to discuss options, to iterate until we get it right. We deliver frequently, and we make the product more and more robust as we go. And the goal is customer satisfaction. So hitting the bullseye would be customer satisfaction. In traditional, we're very focused on the schedule and the budget. I'll talk to you next about what it means to be iterative and what it means to be incremental, because those are characteristics together that make up Agile. Agile is both. So let's first look at incremental. Incremental means that we deliver in increments or little bits at a time. So when we deliver our PMP, it's a 5-day boot camp. When we deliver on that boot camp, we deliver incrementally. You get the materials from day one, we talk through day one, but what we do is we assess at the end of each of our boot camps, we do a survey. And based on what we learn from day one, the next increment can be adjusted. So we can then deliver an increment that hopefully is closer to what the customer is looking for. And with each delivery, we're delivering a little bit at a time. So that's what incremental means, as opposed to a ta-da moment where the customer gets the whole product at the end. And that's when you learn if they like it or not. Iterative is the opportunity to make changes, and we can add features with each and every iteration. So if we were developing, I'll tell you an example of iterative, and one of the most popular global apps is called WhatsApp. How many of you use WhatsApp to message without having to incur any data charges? Yeah, as long as you have access to Wi-Fi, you can use WhatsApp or internet, right? And no data charges, you can communicate globally. Right. WhatsApp, and you can look into this if you're interested to know a little bit more about it. When WhatsApp began, it was nothing more than a messaging system. It was basically just a messenger. That was all it did. And that was the first iteration. Usually the first iteration produces something known as a minimum viable product. So it was just messaging. What does WhatsApp do today, so many iterations later? What is WhatsApp able to do now? Video calls? Yeah. Hi, Ikoima. Yeah, video, that's right. It's stories. Can you do, yeah, group chats? You can do group, that's right. You can do voice and video calling. So it has much more available, but it didn't all happen at once. Oh, sharing files, thank you. Right. Status of your post. So that didn't happen with the very first release of WhatsApp. It wasn't like, ta-da, here you go. Emojis, stickers, I love it. And so being iterative meant that they released a minimum viable product, and with future releases, the product could offer more and more based on what was important to the customer now. And we know that customer needs can change. We can be really finicky as customers. And if we were trying to release this all at once, the customer's opinions and needs could be changing the whole time. And so yeah, and so Francisco, you point out that in traditional projects, many changes means poor planning or lack of knowledge, but I'll even go one step further, that many changes can also mean that we have a changing environment, and sometimes it's out of our control what changes are happening. And so sometimes in order to deliver on a traditional project, especially the longer and longer the timeline of the project is, you would almost need to be able to see into the future a little bit to know that your environment would stay stable enough for that project to still deliver the value you thought it should way back at the beginning. And so with Agile, if you're able to break a product down into minimum viable product that can be released sooner, and then add features as you go that are really aligned to what and being in tune with the customer's needs now, you might be able to take an Agile approach. So that's where PMI was going with this, incorporating Agile into the PMP exam. Another one of the features or characteristics of Agile is that it's empirical. Empiricism is fact-based, it's evidence-based. So in traditional project management, we have a lot of formulas, and we can end up delivering something. Here, I'll give you an example. We have something called earned value management. They're formulas. It's a bunch of formulas that say, if we keep moving in this direction, we should create this much value in our project, because it has $1 million budget. We've completed half the work. Therefore, we've delivered $500,000 worth of value. Well, with Agile, we say, you know, it's valuable if we use it, and if it has utility for the customer. That's where we assess value. So traditional is kind of a projection of what value the project should deliver, where Agile measures the value as we deliver it. So it's a little bit different the way we gauge success in a project. And what does the M stand for? Management. So it's earned value management is the EVM. And sometimes we'll call it earned value analysis. That's another way to talk about those formulas. So yeah, so Ignacio, you say many changes in Agile can end up with something totally different from what the client wants. I would say hopefully the client is so close to your project that they have a seat at the table almost in Agile. The relationship between the project team and the customer is somewhat blurred in Agile. The customer's right there. And every time you deliver a new iteration or a new little increment of product, the customer should be right there telling you if that product is on track with what they want, so that you do deliver what they want. For sure, what changes in Agile is from the beginning what the customer thinks they want, and what the customer ends up wanting can be very different. Because I don't know about you, but if you ask me what I want on paper, I'll give you an idea of what I think. But if you put a product demo or prototype in my hand, then I can give you much more clarity in my feedback and tell you exactly what I'm looking for. And I might not have even known it myself when I was trying to describe what I thought I wanted. So Agile helps us to really assess empirically, fact-based, evidence-based. The other thing about empirical that I like to use as an example, does anybody here know what the Scoville scale is? What is the Scoville scale? I think I spelled that correctly. Pablo, heat and food. Yeah, it's the hot pepper measurement or chili. So if you ask me, and we had a talk about whether whether I like spicy food, I think I do. I thought I did until I met my husband and realized, whoa, there's a whole other level to how spicy food can be. And maybe I actually don't like spicy the way I thought I did. And so empirical is a way of taking out the opinion, taking out the subjectivity. The Scoville scale was an empirical way of measuring heat in food. Something is using empirical fact-based data. So turns out I'm probably lower on the scale on the Scoville scale than I might have thought before. Okay, we'll talk about the hybrid approaches now. And I won't go through each and every one of these with you in detail, because we actually have a course available to you if you're interested in it. It's in Percipio now, and it's Agile based, sorry, hybrid approaches to projects, and you can search for that and find it. It talks about all of the different hybrid approaches. It also talks about having a strong foundation first. Know traditional project management, understand Agile, then try to put them together. And the reason we say that is because if you're not strong with the fundamentals and then you try to blend them, it can create a little bit of chaos sometimes. And there's a funny little story, and you can find it online. It's called "We Tried Baseball and It Didn't Work." And if you look up this story, it's basically saying, Agile doesn't work or hybrid doesn't work. But then when you dig in and you ask a little bit more, they'll say, well, we used Agile, but we did it this way. We changed a few things. So if you have a favorite recipe that's delicious and somebody changed 3 or 4 of the ingredients, what might happen to the outcome? So if you're going to look at hybrid approaches, just have a strong understanding of what traditional looks like by itself, what agile looks like by itself, and which parts are you going to pull from each one that will work in a project. So here are some examples. If you are an agile team working within a traditional organization, or with a, let's say a subcontractor, so your organization is agile, the subcontractor is not, but you work side by side all the time, this might be the way that you blend the approaches. There is also an example of, let's say, pharmaceutical trials or medical equipment trials. So in Agile, we might be trying different types of medication with different groups. And I'll give you an example of, so we have, let's say, 5 groups of, and there are different trials that are happening. And we determine that one of the groups is working out pretty well. We want to move forward with this and release it to the public. It doesn't work that way. There will be a traditional end to that, most likely through the Food and Drug Administration or the appropriate government entity that has a traditional way of doing things. So you might be agile saying, okay, if we're using this dosage, we don't want to hurt anybody. So if we start to get any bad results, we'll stop or we'll change. And that's the agile part. The traditional is at the end with the release. Here's another one, traditional. Let's say you have a big manufacturing company, big bottling soda, okay, so soft drinks. And you have really perfected your processes. Everything's streamlined and efficient. It's run very traditionally from beginning to end. But now you want to explore a new flavor of soft drink. You might want to take a little agile approach to that where you have taste tests and you're just performing these taste tests. But if somebody says, ew, that's bad, I don't like that, and a lot of people don't, well then let's stop. Let's go back and iterate and adapt and try a different new flavor until we get the one we want, and then move that into our normal production, which is in a traditional way. Agile with a traditional aspect could be an agile organization, and maybe there's just one little piece that you have to handle because there's a regulatory step in there and it must be done in this plan-driven manner. So these are the different kinds of hybrid approaches you could have. All right. So how many of you start out your project knowing from the beginning what your budget is? And you have to stick to that budget, and that is what's going to drive your project. Or how many of you start with the scope first? So by scope, I mean what it is you're creating. You first plan the work and the deliverable, then based on the scope, you are able to figure out what the schedule and the budget would be. Okay, so for some of you, all right, thank you for sharing. So you have to stick with the budget. But what came first, the scope or the budget? Scope first. Okay, so you decided what it was you were going to create and then determined if this is our need, we'll figure out what the schedule and budget would be. Yeah, the proposal phase or the initiating. Okay, right, you do tend to get the scope first. So here's my question. What if the scope is unknown? Okay, what if the scope is unknown? Who doesn't necessarily know their scope these days? Let's think about some projects out there that are innovative. You don't really know, right? Customer doesn't know what they need, but they have a strong budget limit. Pablo, this is perfect example right here. This is perfect. Your customer has a strong budget, but they don't really know what they need or it's changing. Okay, so that's where Agile can come in. Normally, in traditional, I say normally, traditionally, in plan-driven project, scope comes first. Based on that scope, we'll determine what the timeline or schedule and what the cost or budget will be. And then we start to execute the project once those are all in agreement and realistic. But in Agile, what if we know we want to go to Mars, but we're not exactly sure all of the work that will go into that? We don't know. What if we know that we want to have a self-driving car, but we don't actually know every task or activity that's going to go into creating a self-driving car? And so, right, what do we do then? What we do is we turn this triangle upside down. And just like Pablo said with the customer, we have a budget, we have a schedule. What can we deliver with this budget and with this schedule? And then based on what we're able to deliver, we can learn more about the viability of the product, whether it's worth it to iterate again and add more features and more functionality. So this is called the Agile. It's just the inverse triangle. And so that's the approach. I know this might sound really literally upside down to those of you who are used to having your scope drive your project. And so what I would encourage you to do is, if you do join us for the new PMP Bootcamp, we will have a day dedicated to Agile, but you can also check out our Intro to Agile. We have a whole course about Intro to Agile and that approach. So you can learn more about it separately if you'd like to. All right, we're going to talk about this exam a little bit. So, oops, that should say for, not form. I have a typo on there. For complete exam information, visit the Project Management Institute at pmi.org, and we're actually going to do that together. And so, oh, good. I'm glad you enjoyed the Agile courses. Thank you for sharing that. I'm going to pull in the PMI site so you can take a look at what we're referring to here. So hopefully, if I do this correctly and drag in the correct the correct browser, which I just grabbed the wrong one. There we go. Okay, if I've done this correctly, you should be seeing the PMBOK Guide 7th edition. Are you seeing that on the screen right now? A little picture of the PMBOK Guide? Okay, good. That's good to hear. First, I'm going to go to this site for PMI. So you start with pmi.org, go to certifications. From certifications, there are several certification types. We want the PMP. From there, you'll find a little bit of information about the exam. So the exam content outline is here. There are two out there right now. You'll want to grab the one for the current exam. So there'll be an exam content outline, and it'll specify 2021. Or the current one. If you want that one, you can always opt for it. I chose the wrong certification. Let me go to the PMP. I accidentally chose there we go. I think I chose the program management. There we go. Okay. You have your exam content outline. It's also uploaded into your student folder. So you'll find that in our student folder, the link that Carl shared and the link that was on our front page today. So that information is very helpful. It talks about the breakdown of the exam, and we'll go over it here as well. It also talks about the prerequisites for taking the exam. So, and Carl just shared the student document link again. Thanks, Carl. This is a little bit about the prerequisites. So everything you need to know is going to be here on the PMI.org website. We also have, this is that exam content outline that's in your student folder. This is the new version. And I've taken some of the most important content and pulled it out to share with you today. Then we have the 7th edition, and I know you'll be interested to know what does that have an impact on the exam? What's happening there? It does not. So whatever you're learning right now for the 2021 will remain accurate. You don't have to worry about any changes that might come along because of the PMBOK 7th edition. You'll still have what you need to know. Okay, this is new. It used to be that the PMBOK 6th edition was the student guide, and then you might have to know more above and beyond the PMBOK 6th edition, especially quality. There was a lot of information there and in resources that you couldn't find in the PMBOK guide, and we've always provided that to you, to the learner. Now the reference list has grown. Now we have 10 different books available. And if you go to the PMP channel, once we open up our PMP training and our boot camp for October 5th, those books that we were able to get for you, they will be there in your learning platform and available to you. So they include the PMBOK guide. Notice this doesn't say a specific edition. It will just be the current edition of the PMBOK guide. So whether it's 6th or when we roll to 7th, that will be your reference book. If you took all of these books and you stack them together, it would be this high. And don't worry, we bring that information all together for you. You don't have to go buy those books and read them cover to cover. It really wouldn't prepare you for the exam the way a good PMP exam prep program can prepare you. So that's what we do in our boot camp. That's a lot of books. So that's the reference list. And even with this reference list, PMI still says that the references here are helpful, but there's a broader set of resources and text even beyond this. So you don't have to go looking around and finding out what those are. We bring them together for you. All right. If you are familiar with the current version of the exam content outline, you'll know that it breaks the exam into domains. And it will continue to do that, but the domains are changing. It used to be initiating through closing, and it was the order of the project, traditional project from beginning to end. And now what happens is it's broken down into more of the values. So people, process, and business environment make up the new exam domains. And a question, thank you for asking, Ginger, will our boot camp provide the certificate for the contact hours for the exam? And Carl, if I get this wrong, please let me know. What I believe to be the case is that you self-report your hours to PMI, and so you would self-report the education to PMI. You can go into your learning platform and there's a tab called Activity. And if you look at your activity tab, you can even take screenshots of all of the content that you've done, including it could be the boot camp, it could be any of the other courses out there that we have available for PMP, and then you self-report them. And that's how you collect your 35 hours. We do have some guidance on how to spend those 35 hours that I'll tell you in a moment, so that you spend your time wisely in the learning platform. But I do believe that'll be self-reported, and Carl will correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's the way we'll be doing the 2021. Yeah, and I don't believe we'll be producing a single certificate for the 35 hours. That's why the self-reporting is a lot easier. You could just say Skillsoft, 35 hours, and they don't, in the past, they haven't let you upload a document unless you get audited. And if they audit you and ask, okay, tell us more about your education, that's where the screenshot from your activity would come in. And so, oh yeah, if you already have a certificate of completion for 35 hours, for 35 hours of content, then that would be fine. And PMI does not, they don't expire. So if you already got a certificate sometime in the past, that would still be good. However, I don't think it would prepare you well for this new version of the exam. So if you learned earlier this year, it's good that you're here learning what's changing and what's new. So these are your 3 exam domains. There will still be 200 questions on the exam. And in the exam, let's take a single domain. We'll take the process domain here. So within the process domain, we're going to dig deeper. We're going to kind of look at that under a magnifying glass. And inside a process, there will be tasks. So a project manager, when performing processes for the project, and those processes still have to do with things like quality and risk management and stakeholder engagement. As you're looking at the processes, there will be these tasks or underlying responsibilities that the project manager and team need to perform. And then if we dig even deeper into the tasks, you'll find something called an enabler. An enabler is an example of the work associated with a task. So a process, in the process domain, maybe you are performing the task of assessing and managing risks. So that's the task. In order to do that, one of the enablers will be to determine risk management options. So those could be things like, we are going to mitigate this risk, or we are going to transfer this risk over to our insurance company. Those are the enablers. The task is a little bit higher. So within a task, there could be multiple enablers. And that's the way it kind of drills down. And we provide all of this for you. So how do we do it? What does our content look like? Oh, I skipped a slide. I'll get to our content in a moment. So this is an example of within the domain of process, how many different tasks there can be. So I just showed you one a moment ago, assess and manage risks, but the list is long. You'll find this right inside that exam content outline that I shared, and that's in your student folder. You'll find these tasks. But this isn't enough to prepare you for the exam. We're going to walk our participants through the actual tools, techniques, and formulas that say, how do I assess and manage risks? What are the tools that I would use to engage my stakeholders? So that's what our content is all about, the learning part of our PMP exam prep. So the task, assess and manage risks, and then the enablers. It's kind of a repeat of the last few slides, but to give you an example of what we'll do, we'll go this extra step. This is where we spend the great deal of our time teaching our participants in these tools and techniques that you need to know to solve problems on the exam. So that's where we spend, it's hands-on too in our boot camps. If you've ever attended one of our boot camps, we work through problems together, and participants, you would be answering questions as we go. So it would be very interactive. The PMBOK 7th edition, let's pull that back in a moment and talk about it. So the PMBOK 7th, what's changing? So on the PMBOK 7th edition, we're moving away from those processes, no longer focused on Here, step 1. Once you complete step 1, you do steps 2 and 3, and then you move on through the 49 processes. It's not prescriptive like that anymore. It's a principles-based approach. So we're looking at project management from a much higher perspective, and that's values and the business environment and the people. So that's where it's, and the PMBOK guide is getting smaller as a result, because they're not telling you you have to do it in this order. It's getting smaller. It will be released digitally. So there's an area of the website, I think it might still be piloted at this moment, that PMI is creating. It's called Standards Plus. So if you're a member of PMI, you have access to the Standards Plus website. The PMBOK guide will be there. It will, as far as I know, it will not be published where you can buy a printed copy. And that's because it's going to be iterative. This PMBOK guide will be changing real time with any best practices that are pulled in. So that's going to be very challenging for the learner. For us, we're used to this. We'll always stay on top of the changes and make sure that you know what they are. So the PMBOK guide, less prescriptive, more principles-based, digital version, and always evolving to go along with the actual role of a project manager. Okay, that's the PMBOK 7th. Now, whoops, I need to go back to our deck here. It will incorporate predictive, agile, and hybrid approaches, so you're going to see that. For those of you who did study on a previous version of the exam, you know what this means. The ETOs, inputs, tools, and techniques and outputs, they're going away. That was part of that prescriptive way of doing things. So no longer 49 processes with inputs, tools, and techniques and outputs, gone. So more flexibility with the new PMBOK guide due in the 4th quarter of this year. Yeah, so if this is your first time and you want to certify, I would recommend, since we're nearly in October now, we're getting close to October, it might make the most sense to move into the new version of the exam so that you don't have a lot of pressure on you to finish by a certain date and to sit for the exam by the end of December. If you're already in your studies, then that's a different story, and being able to sit for the exam, if you've already invested time studying, that might make more sense. Okay, new question styles and a new way of delivering the exam. So the new question styles, you're taking the exam Saturday, John? Good luck to you. Please let us know how it goes. Wonderful. And you know the mentors are available to you full-time if you have any questions last minute as you take the practice exam in your learning platform. And that goes for anybody taking the exam, current version, later version. We are here to support you the whole time. So good luck to you, and let us know. All right. So in the current version of the exam, there are 4 possible answers and only one of them is right. And it's multiple choice, and every single question is delivered in that style. On the new exam, it's changing. So we now have drag and drop options, and the drag and drop would be like matching. So it might be, here are 4 options, and here are 4 choices, and you drag and drop, meaning that you would have to get all 4 of them correct. Then we will also see animations and scenarios. So there could be a little movie or a little vignette that's a role play between the project manager and the team. Or if it's agile, it could be the scrum master and the team, and they're talking, and all of a sudden there's a dilemma, and now you have to answer what would be the best way to, what should the project manager do in this situation, and you'll answer that. And there can be multiple correct answers. That's tricky because that didn't used to be the case. It used to be one and only one answer was right. And we would say you have to choose what we would call the PMI best answer. So it was the textbook best answer. And a lot of times the exam would say, what should you do first? Or what would be the best approach? So there would be one option, not anymore. There can be more than one correct. And you'll have to identify more than one option. The other thing that's changed, and this is as of June of this year, that PMI has introduced the online proctored exam. Has anybody taken the online proctored exam? Oh, you like the new approach better, Gina? Yeah. So I have heard good things about the online proctoring. Okay, your colleague took it. Yeah, so Andrea, did they give feedback? Did they say it was good or bad, or do they have an opinion? I've heard good things about the online proctoring. Good, I'm glad to hear that. So Pearson VUE is the provider for PMI for all of the exams, in person or online virtual. It's important, the connection. So you have to have a strong connection. Oh, I'm sorry. So he lost some time because of a break in the connection. Yeah. So these are proctored one-on-one. You have to be aware of some things. So first of all, how do you write down your formulas? Where would you do that? You're not allowed to have a piece of paper on your desk, not like in a in-person test center. They would give you a piece of paper or a whiteboard, and you would use that. Now you have to be comfortable with the whiteboard tool. So even Pearson VUE has a practice board that you can try out on their website. So I'll type this in for you. Pearson VUE, they have a whiteboard practice that you can take. Be really comfortable with that so that you don't have to struggle with the whiteboard and how to use it on exam day. You don't want to spend any more time than you need to on that. And so you'll need to get used to the whiteboard. Also, they will want to see your immediate working space. So if you have your webcam, they'll load software to make sure you're not launching anything else on your computer at that time, like a Word document in the background with some information on it. That's a no-no. They will load the software, make sure that your workspace is clean, so you'll have to pick up your computer, your laptop or webcam, and rotate it 360 degrees to show that everything is clear. They do break the exam into two parts. Part 1, 100 questions, you get 2 hours. You take a 10-minute break in the middle. When you take your 10-minute break, you can't go back to anything that was on that first half of the exam. So you want to make sure all those questions are answered and turned in. Then after your 10-minute break, the second half of the exam will open up for you. Oh, they did allow a bottle of water. Okay, that's good to know. I didn't even know that was allowed. So glad to hear that. Multiple monitors, that's a good question, William. My instinct is to say no, but I am not certain. And I would say that the best source for that would be Pearson VUE, and to ask. And I'm sure they've been asked before, and they can give you more information about it, what's allowed and not allowed. And so to even have a proctored PMP exam online is a big deal. I don't think this would have happened this year if the COVID-19 situation didn't force it. But now we're there. We've got the online proctoring. And so even as exam locations open back up, I think we'll continue to see that online proctoring. They always had it with the PMI ACP, so this was new for PMP. Okay. All right, a couple questions in the chat. So One, Bernard, if, for example, 3 correct answers out of 4, but you only state 2 of them, does that mean that you would fail the answer? If they do this, and Carl, you can let me know this too, I think they introduced the style with the CAP-M earlier, multiple answer, and it's my understanding that you wouldn't fail it, but you would only get partial credit for it. So I think with the CAP-M, that's the way it works, but definitely correct me if I'm wrong, Carl. I believe that, okay, that's your understanding as well. And behind the scenes, Carl gave me a little chat here. Okay, so that you wouldn't miss it altogether, but it would be like a partial credit situation. So these are the new styles and the new delivery of the exam. Now we'll look at the recertification process. Or, oops, I skipped the slide I was talking about. So this is our recommendation for where you would get your 35 contact hours. Our boot camp delivers 15 hours. And so those would be in your learning platform. The rest of the content that we have out there, some of this is still being worked on in this moment because we're pretty early to offer PMP exam prep. So you will see if you do take our PMP bootcamp that we do have the slide decks available for you. They're completed from the people domain and the business environment domain. During our bootcamp, we will be focusing in very much on the process domain because that's the one that has the formulas and it has the tricky questions that come in on process and understanding truly the difference between traditional, agile, and hybrid. So our exam prep bootcamp focuses there. And we also have some self-directed learning. So when we have these blocks of 13 hours in process, 4 in people, and 3 in business environment, those are self-directed content in the learning platform available to you. And currently, I think the process domain is released. The business environment comes next, and then you'll see people. Don't worry, if you're going to take this new exam January 1, you'll have plenty of time and these will be released to you. All of them will be available in plenty of time for you to go through the content. But this is the order I would recommend that you take them in. Okay, and although the domains can be taken in any order. So that would be the recommended 35 contact hours that you can then self-report. Then what do you do as far as recertification? There are no changes to the PMP recertification process. It doesn't matter what version of the exam you passed, you still take the 60 PDUs, professional development units, in a 3-year cycle and report them to the it's the CCRS system at PMI. So that would continue to be the case. Will the content for those who intend to take the exam this year still be available? Yes, Gustavo, it will. We won't be retiring the PMP 6th edition content anytime soon, certainly not before the end of the year. So you can still go in to the learning platform. You can access those courses. The boot camp is there too on replay, and I would encourage you to watch the replay boot camp for the if you're taking the exam by the end of this year. Okay, let's see. And by the way, this is, I think, let me double check. Yeah, so this is perfect. Carl, if you wouldn't mind, could you chat that link again to the survey? For those of you who just wanted to know what's new, get a feel for what's coming up in 2021, really appreciate that you've joined us. And I'm going to now kind of shift over to this Q&A. And I think we're going to have a lot of questions. So Carl and I use this strategy. If you don't mind, help us out. If you could send your questions over to the Q&A, then there's no way I can accidentally miss them in the chat. The Q&A makes sure that a question stays there until we dismiss it, where the chat just scrolls. So if you could send questions to the Q&A, Carl and I will manage those, make sure you get your questions answered. I'll take this last question out of the chat, but then we'll shift to Q&A. So if you see in Zoom that Q&A is a separate pod and you have a question, send it there. I'll answer this question. I'm studying the 6th edition, but not quite ready to take the exam by the end of the year. Should I stop studying the 6th edition and start with the 7th? How is the book different? That is a great question. Here's what I would recommend that you do. The 7th edition isn't out yet, but when it comes to the PMBOK guide in general, it's only one of so many resources available to you. Here's what you can use from the 6th edition that will still be very helpful and meaningful. Read chapters 1 through 3 of the PMBOK Guide 6th edition. Also study the glossary. So the vocabulary words, definitely know those vocabulary words, and that would be really meaningful to you. Here's the part you should completely ignore in the PMBOK 6th edition. If you're not going to take it this year, don't pay attention to the 49 processes. Don't pay attention to inputs, tools and techniques and outputs. Don't even worry yourself with that type of information at all. Instead, shift over and read the Agile Practice Guide that accompanies the PMBOK Guide 6th edition. Spend time there. It's only 90 pages or so, and it'll be really worthwhile. Read that and the vocabulary there. Then what I would recommend that you do is join us October 5th through the 9th, 5, 6, 7, yeah, 5th through the 9th, and learn about the exam from this new principles-based approach rather than those 49 processes. So join us or watch on replay at your convenience. And that's what I would recommend. So you can still spend your energy with some of the resources you have, but just focus on those areas. Oh yeah, it's my pleasure. I'm happy to help. That's what I would recommend. And I'm going to shift over to the Q&A now and take some questions out of there. So one of the questions was, what do you suggest as an alternative of the PMBOK? Rita Mulcahy was the question. Rita Mulcahy is a great resource for PMP exam prep. And sometimes if our students have taken all of our content and they just want to keep studying, I'll refer them to Rita Mulcahy. But here's the trick. The Rita Mulcahy, I'll type it in, as far as I know, is currently on the 9th edition. That is not the right edition to study for the new version of the exam. That will prepare you for the one that's retiring in December. So I'm not sure if Rita Mulcahy if that organization, RMC, is producing a new study series. I would just be sure if you do use that resource that it's aligned to the version of the exam that you want to take, which is the 2021 update. Oh, good. Okay, so Sherry, thank you for sharing that. They're sending the updated book to print. Thank you. Wonderful resource. Our goal is always to provide you everything you need, all wrapped up and contained in our exam prep. But I think if you were ever going to add on other value-added resources, the Rita Mulcahy book is great. Okay. Question. Will the PMBOK 6th edition remain valid through January 2021? So one thing I want to clarify is the PMBOK 6th edition as a book will be replaced in the 4th quarter of this year. And then I would start referring to the PMBOK 7th edition when it becomes available. If you're referring to this version of the exam that's based on the PMBOK 6th edition, only good until December 31, 2020. So I'm not sure if that answers your question. But if you, let's say that you sit for the exam on December 31st, I don't know what day of the week that is, but let's just say, and unfortunately you didn't pass and now you have to sit again, you have to take the exam based on whatever version is being offered on the day you take it. So they will not say, oh yes, we'll deliver that same version of the exam because we understand that that's what you studied for. They don't. They will make you shift January 1 to the new exam. Yes, if you take the exam by the end of the year, you will still be doing that on the current version. Correct. You don't even have to say to Pearson VUE or PMI, I want to take this version. Based on the date you take the exam, that's what will determine which version you take. PMI did do a pilot of the new exam sometime back in, I think it was April, just to see if their exam was, it's part of, I'm trying to think of the word. There is a governing body that oversees PMI and basically says, if you're going to give an exam and award a certification, you need to follow certain standards and make sure that your exam questions have been validated. So PMI had to do that. They did a pilot, but that's gone, it's closed. If you sit for the exam today, you're sitting for this version. You sit January 1st or after, you sit with the new version. Okay. Do you have any video or boot camp with information about the online exam rules and tips and tricks? We used to have best practices for the exam for this version, but if you're talking about the new version, then I would say we're still in production on the best practices, tools, tips, and tricks, and some of them will be the same. But what would be the best resource for that? I would say Pearson VUE and PMI. So let me pull back PMI very quickly and show you what I'm referring to. If you go to PMI certifications, PMP, from there, they have what's on the exam, that's here, and passing the exam. And I would recommend these for the resources, for the tools and tips, especially since they come directly from the source. That's what I would recommend that you use. Okay. I'm talking about the current exam, and oh, I think that might be a follow-up for you, Carl. Okay. For people who studied the PMBOK 6th edition, is there a chance to pass the new exam, or would they need to restudy on the new version? Okay, here's what I would say, Andrea. I'll break this down to exactly what's changed. I'll be very specific. So you could pass, but you would have to do a little bit more. So you could take the PMBOK 6th edition content, right? The current content, but you're going to have to add some things. You're going to need to add our Agile bootcamp. You have to, because you're going to need to know who a product owner is and what does a Scrum Master do and what's a product backlog. So you wouldn't have gotten that from the current content. But if you take the Agile bootcamp, which is specifically, I think we have an intro to Agile, which is only 3 hours, and then we have the full bootcamp, which is 10. I actually recommend the full bootcamp if you can. That would be helpful. The other thing you need to know that's new is going to be a focus on emotional intelligence. There is a lot of emotional intelligence that comes in. You'll want to I'm not spelling it correctly. Emotional intelligence, there we go. And then governance. That is a very large area. Governance and regulatory compliance. Those are not in the current content. So I would recommend that you focus on those particular courses that we're going to be releasing very soon here. And I have the slide decks ready to go, and they're very useful because they have bullet points and you can kind of you could go through it and self-study, but pretty soon it will be offered as a course that you can watch. So I'd recommend those. Does that help a little bit with what's changing, what's new, how to transition from, if you're currently studying, what can you add on? Okay, good. Yeah. Will there be other boot camps besides October 5th? Absolutely, yes. We don't tend to advertise them or put them on the calendar until they're a little closer, but we offer a large, oh, nice, a CISSP, Governance and Regulatory, thank you. We will offer live every other month. So PMP Live is going to be every other month. That means the next time we'll offer it will be December. At live, but then on replay, we'll always have a replay version available to you if you've just not been able to align the schedule. And of course, we're a global audience. I know that our calendar is not always going to be convenient. So if you can't make it to a live, the replay is on demand. And that's for Percipio users now. For those of you who are still on Skillport, if you're still on Skillport, we do have a student folder where you can watch on demand. However, the tricky part is it won't be tracked in your learning platform for auditing purposes. The activity wouldn't be tracked there where we could say, yes, you watch this. The 5 domains, great question. Ashley asks, will the 5 domains and knowledge areas be gone? So the 5 domains just won't be the way the exam is aligned anymore. It used to be aligned from initiating through closing. So that part won't happen. Now we, of course, have the people, process, and business environment. So, but they're not gone. So if you're still talking about a traditional project and the question that they're asking is that approach of traditional, you still have a traditional life cycle where you initiate a project and you plan and execute, you monitor and control the project work, and then you close. So those won't go away, those process groups. The knowledge areas are still relevant too. So we still talk about project risk and quality and scope and schedule and cost and stakeholders and communication and procurement. What am I missing? Those are still very relevant. They just don't really call them that. They don't call them out in a prescriptive way anymore, because now you could be talking about risk, but it could be risk in an agile project, or it might be risk in a traditional project. And so they don't go away, but we just shift the way we look at them. I hope that helps, Ashley. That's a great question. Yeah. Is there a charge to take the boot camp? You're a Percipio user. April, I am not aware of any charge at all. If you're a Percipio user, everything that's available in Percipio is there for you. So whether you're in Percipio as a trial member or if you've got the full access, it's my understanding that it's available. Now, if you are on some kind of trial of Percipio, I might not have an accurate answer for you, but if you're just a regular Percipio user, everything in there is available. And when is the bootcamp available? After the live version, usually within about 24 to 48 hours after each session, the recording is posted into the channel. And actually, I can show you this. So let me cue that up for you and show you where you find it in the channel. So I've got Percipio bookmarked here. I'll drag it in and we'll take a look together. Okay, so here's Percipio. If you're a Percipio user, you go to the library all the way down to Skillsoft Bootcamps. And then within there, the bootcamps, we have a channel for project management bootcamps. So right here, we have now, you'll want to be a little bit careful, because if you see Agile development, you might think, oh, that's the one that Barb told us to take, but that's actually for developers. The Agile Project Management Bootcamp is the one that I'm referring to. So you can see the PMI ACP that's referenced there. The other is going to be our PMP certification. So this, I'll open up. And after we have a live class, the replay is placed right in there immediately after 24 to 48 hours. So that's when you'll see it updated in the channel. Hopefully that helps, April, to answer your questions. Thank you. And I think I answered that one. Will there be other boot camps besides October 5th? Yes, so we will have one in December. If you want to see our calendar, we do have a boot camp calendar, and I'm going to pull this away so I can search offline. And I can share the link to it. Oh, did you already share it, Carl? I think so. I have a lot of things, controls blocking the chat. There we go. Thank you, Carl. Carl just chatted it. So calendar.skillsoft.com. For those of you watching us on replay, that is your calendar that would show you the precise dates that we have scheduled for future boot camps. Not just project management. We've got all sorts of good boot camps out there. All right. I think we are caught up so far in the Q&A. Are there any other questions? And, you know, we gauged the duration of this, I think, at about 2 hours, not knowing how many questions might come along. If we finish early, that's certainly okay. We don't want to waste any of your time if it's not value added. So if you do have follow-up questions, of course, please reach out to us. The mentors are available in your learning platform. You can find access to Ask a Mentor there. And if you're not sure how to do that, I'll show you how to access the mentor so you'll know what to do to follow up after today. It's right here. So once you're inside the channel, Ask a Mentor is right there in the top part of your learning platform. All right. What are the next steps for those who are completely new to PMP? Great question. If you're completely new to PMP, I would recommend that you explore the application process with PMI. PMI, I would recommend that you consider joining. So it's $140 per year. That's for or US equivalent. I'm not sure if that's consistent globally, but $140 per year for membership. But if you join, you save $150 to sit for your exam. So it makes sense to join. $35 for students, Sherry. Thank you for sharing. That's great. That is wonderful, because when you join PMI, you also have access to projectmanagement.com and all of the resources available on that site. So you get a lot for your membership, access to the PMBOK guide, and all of the updates will always be there in your learning, in the PMI platform if you're logged in under your account. And so the boot camp for October 5th through 9th is going to be aligned to the new exam content. We're no longer doing live boot camps for the exam that's retiring at the end of the year. If you want to still take the current exam, I recommend that you watch our boot camps on replay. If you're interested in the new content, join us October 5th through the 9th for our new updates. I'm really excited about this boot camp. We have improvements in our graphics design. The slides are more interesting and engaging, and we have that Agile content that I can't wait to start teaching our folks who've been used to traditional project management this whole time. So let's see. Will the online courses and the replays for the 7th edition or the 2021 aligned edition, will they be distinguished in Percipio from the current That's a great question. Absolutely, yes. You'll still want to be careful, make sure that you're watching the right one, but what we call it everywhere, you'll see this either 2021 update, you'll see that in parentheses, or you'll see 2021 aligned. If you see either of those, you know you're in the right content for the new exam. If you see just PMBOK 6th edition, that's how we called the old one. That's what we called the current one that's about to be retired. Okay, so that's how you can tell them apart. And oh, the boot camp set hours. Yes, the hours for the boot camp, that's October 5th through the 9th. It will be 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Eastern time. So it's 3 hours every day, Monday through Friday. That's the schedule for the boot camp. And we do take a break because that's 3 solid hours in a row. We do take a 15-minute break in the middle of that boot camp. I'm looking at the Q&A for see a few new questions popping up here. Okay. Oh, free, are there mock exams available on Skillport? Carl, can you let us know about that? Is the mock exam, I think no matter which content you're in, you're going to have a different version of the exam that's aligned correctly. So in other words, you wouldn't have the old exam simulator with the new content, but I'm pretty sure that's all ready to go. And Carl can let me know if that's right or not right, but I'm pretty sure that mock exam or that exam simulator is ready to go, aligned with the new 2021 content. The date of that session, Amit, that's the October 5th through 9th. That's the one that'll be the boot camp. After October, what will be the next boot camp after that for PMP? I'm going to open the calendar right now and drag it in and share it with you. I hope you can see this. This is what Carl chatted, the link. And so the next one will be December, and there it is, 2021 update, PMP exam prep from December 7th through the 11th, and that will also be 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Eastern time. And then, of course, on demand, if you want to take it, if you just want to watch the replay. Oh, thanks, Carl's confirming that there is a practice exam for the current content. Perfect. Yeah. Let's see. Oh, is CAPM or CAPM, which stands for Certified Associate in Project Management, is that certification mandatory for the PMP? It is not. You do not have to take that first. So if you go to the PMI website and you look at the, where was I? I think I was in PMI site before this, if I can go backward. Yeah. This is the certification requirement or prerequisites. So the CAPM is not required, but it is in the OR area. So if you don't have a 4-year degree and 36 months leading projects and 35 hours, then you can go with the offset is a high school diploma or associate's degree or global equivalent, a little more time leading projects. So you have to offset that by 60 months instead of 36. And then the CAPM would replace this class. So the thing is though, the CAPM, it can replace your education and training, but it won't prepare you to pass the exam. I would recommend that you do take some form of exam prep aligned to that new exam. If it's not our boot camp, something that will prepare you. Oh, thanks. Yeah, this is, yeah, Carl is saying if you want to share the registration URL for the October session, if you want to share it. Sorry, I just re-chatted what you just chatted, Carl. Okay. I think we answered the mock exam simulator for the new exam. That's a yes. Can you get all of your credits needed on Skillsoft? Yes. So all of the content that was included in the courses that I showed a few slides back, this is all housed inside the learning platform, either Percipio or Skillport. Now, the key is these are being released right now. You'll find the process domain. If not today, literally in the next few days, these will be available. They're just hot off the presses, you know, they're making it out there. The people domain and business environment domain, I'll be able to provide our slides in PDF form like we normally do for our boot camps, but we won't have the access to the recordings yet. That's still being developed at this moment, but it'll be here by the end of the year. Okay, business environment will be released, I think, in November, and then people domain will follow right after. How do you certify the experience of 36 or 60 months? On the PMI application, on the PMP application, when you submit that, they're going to ask you to describe your work experience, and you have 500 words. It used to only be 550 characters. That was really hard. So for every job or project, you can create a description, document it. They'll ask you what organization you worked for, who your supervisor was. And only if you're audited, they might ask you for additional documentation of that work. Okay. The exam simulator for the current exam, the 2021, okay, it will be housed as soon as we release in Percipio. I think, let me go forward. That should bring me back to where we were in the channel. So once it's ready, it will be here. I'll show you where it is today. It'll be in the same place. It'll be in practice. So watch would be boot camps. Read will be all of the books that we pull in here for you. And so these practice tests, these are going to be retiring as well. At the end of this year, you're not going to want to use those practice tests. We'll be updating the content that you'll want. You do want the Agile practice guide, and you'll there will be other resources that we pull in. Practice is where you find the exam simulator. So this is the current 6th edition, and when you go in here again, when we activate our new 2021 boot camp, you'll find the new simulator right here under practice. Okay. Do you provide transcripts to go with the boot camp content? So we do. We do. Every day after a boot camp, within 24 to 48 hours, our colleague Craig will post the information, the recording, as well as the transcripts into the student folder and here in Percipio. So for those of you at Percipio, you don't even need that. You just go to resources, and right here is where you'll find oops, I went to the wrong place. I'm sorry, these are your slide decks. You'll find it, wait a minute, I'm confusing myself. Carl, I'm sorry. Is it just in the student folder where the transcripts will be placed? I was thinking it would be in here, but I think that's incorrect. I think it's actually in the student folder only. Oh, thanks, Craig chatted in. Thanks, embedded in the replays. Okay, thanks, Craig. Perfect. All right, when can we expect the updated 2021 courses in Percipio? So the boot camp comes first. You'll see the boot camp October 5th through the 9th, and then within 24 to 48 hours of the boot camp, you'll see the recordings and the replay there. For the other content that I pointed out, this content, the process domain, we're getting, I think that might be released pretty soon. And what Craig, who just chatted in, what we're going to do is try to pull those into the channel to help you so that you don't have to just search all throughout all of Percipio, but that we can kind of curate the channel for you and bring in the courses as they become available. Process domain first should be here any day. And then in November, we'll see business environment and people released. So that's the order of things. Sure, but certainly in plenty of time for you to study for January. Yeah, so November is what we can guarantee for all of it. And that's probably the better way of saying it, that November, you could see the whole thing all together, but do join us for the boot camp, because that's going to be the deep dive into the most testable content. And if you really want to wait until everything's ready to go, then I would say our December boot camp, the dates we gave earlier, you can be certain everything will be there. We're trying to help those of you who are the early adopters. You know who you are, the ones who want to be the first to see what's changing. We wanted to make sure that you had those updates available and that you knew what they would be. But you might see that it's a little choppier process for you to make your way through the content if you start right now. All right. To clarify what I was saying, the word curated, when I said they'll be curated in the channels, what I meant by that is that when all this content is ready to go, rather than having to search for a class called performing risk analysis and just searching for it out in the search bar of Percipio, that instead what you'll be able to do is go right into this channel and you'll find the courses that you need in one place. So that's what I meant by curated, as opposed to having to put it up there in the search bar. You just come to the channel and all the coursework you need will be found in one place. It'll be a little bit more convenient for you that way. All right, well, the new exam requires as much memorization of formulas and ETOs, inputs, tools, and techniques and outputs. The inputs, tools, and techniques and outputs are going away. Memorization, there will still be earned value management. So yes, you still need to know things like your cost performance index and how to perform the critical path method. That will be necessary, but the ETOs, the inputs, tools, and techniques and outputs that went along with the 49 processes, gone. You don't have to worry about those any longer. For those of you who are CAP-M candidates, that will still be what drives the CAP-M exam, at least for the time being. But for PMP, no. It'll be principles-based, values-based, techniques, and some formulas. All right. Oh, okay. So a question in the chat, in the Q&A. You've recently completed your SAFE 5 Scrum Master certificate. Congratulations. For those of you who aren't familiar with SAFE, that's a scaled Agile framework. So now you're confused about whether to go for the PMP or the PMI ACP with regard to your role. I think that question could be different for each person depending on your situation. What I would say is that if you were deciding between the PMP or the PMI ACP, by far, the PMP is the one that's more globally recognized. The PMI ACP is in competition with a lot of other Agile certifications and Scrum certifications, so it tends to get a little bit diluted in that large, I guess, sea of different Agile certifications, whereas the PMP is more recognizable. If you're looking for the one that best suits you in your current role, you're not trying to boost the resume for a job search, you just want the skills that you need to do your job, then I would say if you are very Agile focused, then it might make more sense to choose one of those specific methodologies and approaches like Scrum Master or SAFE. If you're just looking for overall best practices across the board, the PMP would be great for that. Ooh, in terms of complexity, which one is more complex, the current or the 2021? Here's what I would say. On the one hand, you're here today in 2020 where we've had years to perfect our coursework and get it aligned to an exam, right? So we know if you get an 80% or better, you're going to do very well on this exam. We're certain of it. Whenever an exam is turned completely upside down, like what's happening right now, what I would say is, number one, I think it's less complex now. I think that if you can learn principles and not worry about whether this is an input to that, or if that technique is a tool you'd use here, that it's going to become easier in that regard. But I don't think this is going to be an easy exam by any means. So what we'll have to calibrate in the next few months is, do we need to focus a little more heavily here, lighten up a little there, but we're very confident that the information you'll get during the boot camp will be the right content aligned to this exam, and then we'll calibrate it and the fine points from there. But I think as a learner, you would, I think the new exam will be a little bit less memorization of those processes that didn't seem to apply to real life. The things you'll have to memorize will be relevant to real life. I don't know if that helps. I hope that helps to answer your question. Oh, Gina, you agree. Okay. Yeah. So that's from my point of view. And we've been deep diving into this content since about May, June. So pretty comfortable telling you this. Right, good point, with the added challenge of multiple answers being correct. That's true. Okay. Oh, thanks. Carl suggests that instead of looking for the course in the channel, let me scroll up and get that link again then. If you would like to register directly for the boot camp, to use this instead of looking for it to appear in the channel. Thanks, Carl. Yeah, that's helpful. Okay. Wow, well, we covered a lot today. You see, those of you who are already familiar with PMP can probably see, whew, there's a lot changing. I feel really comfortable moving forward with the PMP and continuing to prepare our participants for success on this exam. Very excited about it, and really excited to teach Agile and traditional together in a boot camp. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Looking forward to October 5th. I love the slides. They're really pretty. They look a lot better than what we've had. So we're iterating, right? We're adapting and iterating and making our content more robust as we go. So we're being a bit agile, I guess, in our development of this boot camp. So it is a pleasure. Thank you for those of you, for everybody who took the time to join us today. This has been a lot of fun meeting with you, finding out what you have in mind for your PMP journey. A couple other questions that came in here. Do we have a WBS code to charge these hours? Fabian, I love that. I love it. The work breakdown structure and control accounts, right? So that's great. And do we need to register for the PMP exam 2021 using your company email, or do you need to use your personal email? Eduardo, that's a great question. Okay, Carl says it's up to you. Okay, good. Thanks, Carl. I wasn't sure about that. So for anybody here going to join us October 5th? Do we have anybody who's going to be there? Oh, yay. Okay. Enrolled just now. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a pleasure working with you. For those of you who want to hold off a little bit, join us in December. Then I look forward to seeing you then. And thank you so much for your time. Please stay in touch for those of you who do have an exam scheduled. Love to hear how that goes. Thanks so much, everybody. I hope you have a great rest of your week. Look forward to seeing you in a future boot camp. Thank you. Bye, everybody. Bye, Carl. Thank you so much.